Super Smash Bros. Melee is a 25-year-old video game, and for a long time the hierarchy was simple. The older you were, the longer you had played, the more experience you had, the better you tended to be. I mean, some people still go on about the era of the five gods. It's still happening, right? The era of the five gods isn't over, is it? What I'm trying to say is that experience was king. But a few weeks ago, a 19-year-old Luigi player from Virginia beat the best Melee player in the world. And then he did it again. And again. All the while, across the country at Genesis X3, a 14-year-old Donkey Kong player from Colorado was becoming one of the youngest players to ever defeat ranked players in Super Smash Bros. Melee. Melee players are used to the script, but the players who are changing this competitive game as we know it literally did not exist when the game came out. After a quarter century, Super Smash Bros. Melee is undergoing a renaissance, being taken over by a new generation that straight up does not respect the tier list. This isn't an underdog story anymore. This is the story of two teenagers who are taking the world of Melee by storm, with characters nobody could have seen coming. Hey, thanks so much to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. With spring on the way, it's the perfect time to refresh your routine and maybe go touch some grass. Going on a walk, working out, or just grabbing some fresh air, it's nice to have an audio option that fits effortlessly into my day. Raycon sent me their new Essential Open Earbuds a couple months ago, and they've slotted into my daily routine pretty nicely. They have an open ear design that doesn't block out everything around you like regular earbuds do, which I personally like so I can slip them on and have some background tunes for when I'm running errands. They also have great battery life. I've only had to charge them like a couple of times since receiving them, and they're rather lightweight and not uncomfortable at all when I have long workout sessions. They come in a bunch of colors, and I think they're pretty solid for the price. I've never personally been too picky about my audio, so I like options that are pragmatic, affordable, and make sense for my daily routine, and these check all the boxes for me. And the Essential Open Earbuds are perfect for refreshing your routine this spring too. So check the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/turndownforWaltOpen to get 20% off. Thanks again to Raycon for supporting the channel, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Okay, so if you told someone a decade ago that in the Big 2-6, the vanguard of the Melee meta would be teenagers playing Luigi and Donkey Kong, they probably would have laughed you out of the venue. I mean, yeah, there have always been some players out there who could make mid-tiers like Luigi and Donkey Kong work, but they always felt like flash-in-the-pan, one-off moments, never to happen again. Look at Amsa. He single-handedly moved his character up the tier list and even became one of the few people in Melee history to win a major tournament, and that journey took him over a decade of playing. But here we are. There's a pattern beginning to appear, and it is not luck. I mean, that's why I've already made 2 full Luigi videos in the last month and like 500 Donkey Kong videos in the last year, so time is a flat circle, I guess. But why is it though that literal kids are suddenly able to dismantle veterans who have been playing characters like Marth, Sheik, and Fox before these kids could even walk? In my last Luigi video, I went to the character Discord for some notes, and last year I was deep diving into practically every single Junebug set under the sun to try to simply understand the inner machinations of Donkey Kong. But when I compared these two situations together, I realized something pretty crazy. These kids just simply are not playing the same game as the old guard. They're not living in the era of the five gods, but they've instead ushered in a new generation of youth to the game, and it's fucking awesome. In the old days, if you wanted to get good at a mid-tier, you usually had to figure it out on your own. There existed a bit of a push and pull in old school Melee, such that if you invested your time in a mid or low tier, you could usually see some short-term success by simply matchup checking players who might have been better than you. But in exchange, you were sacrificing a huge repository of information, players, and techniques to mold a playstyle around. Players who picked up a Fox, Marth, or Jigglypuff at least had players like Mango, Mewtwo King, or Hungrybox to have a real data point on how those characters could find success at the top level. But the problem there was that everybody else also got to take notes on the players and characters sitting at the top. That was always such a fascinating, perhaps psychological trade-off to me. Do you play for the early game, learn from players who have already succeeded before you, and risk being beaten down by years of data? Or do you take the road less traveled like players like Amsa and Axe did in hopes that you'll reach the summit one day and forge a path for yourself despite its many, many struggles? So I think in some ways your growth as a player on the national stage, especially back then, was either decided or bottlenecked by your local scene. What makes this new generation so interesting to me though is that kids like RapMonster and Dial M, despite also attending their local scenes, grew up in an era of almost infinite resources. Things like UnclePunch's training mods and character-specific Discord servers, means of communication and distribution of ideas that are simply so much better now than they were during the Facebook group and Smashboards eras. Any player can boot up Slippi ranked at 2 AM on a Tuesday and play 50 high-level sets against a cracked-out spacey player without ever leaving their room, while someone back then needed to hope they had reasonable competition in their local area or wait for the next regional tournament. Like, this character viability resurgence is quite literally why Armada had all of Sweden hide his young Link from Hungrybox. Like, they didn't want HBox to find out Armada was practicing a secret character. That's insane. Tools like the Captain Falcon cookbook had already existed for years at this point, and similar resources were being developed for the rest of the 26 character roster Melee had to offer, regardless of how perceivably good these characters were. I mean, hell, putting all the Bowser players in one room is like basically a cult. Zane got a robe, look at this.
I think he beats Fox, I think he beats like Marth, I think he beats Sheik, I think he beats Falcon, Puff. I think Puff is even.
Maybe part of this is that the older generation of players like respected the top tiers because they were basically gatekept by them, while these teenagers didn't grow up with the same trauma or something? I don't know. I feel like an old man shaking his OEM GameCube controller on my front porch, but honestly, the modernization of Melee's tools for practice and learning have been incredible, and thanks to those tools, plus a noticeable increase in top-level Melee player access, RapMonster and Dial M have shown exponential growth. I already made several whole videos breaking down how RapMonster's Luigi has been absolutely torturing Zane with drop-down bears and throw mix-ups. But what I didn't talk about was the physical aspect of the game, the actual hardware that people play on. Notches, fobs, Raspberry Pis and controllers, some people play with box-style controllers, some with Guitar Hero controllers, the opportunities are actually endless. So to be able to play a janky character like Luigi but have access to mechanical upgrades like wave dash notches, etc. makes things pretty insane. Which is what I would say, except RapMonster literally plays on a stock, fresh out of the box Nintendo GameCube controller. No frills, no fancy alterations, no Z-jump drama, no literal circuit boards, there is nothing like that. He's just playing complete straight up Melee. That makes all of the playmaking around advantage-disadvantage all the more fascinating to me, because RapMonster is quite literally outplaying the best player in the world in a matchup that really shouldn't look as one-sided for Italians as it does right now. When I talked to Gibbles, RapMonster's coach, he told me that Rap's success isn't just raw talent either. It was an entire community's collective labbing bestowed upon a teenager with the drive to make it work. When he hit that platform cancel nair, manifested the misfire, and stood up out of his chair before Game 1 was even over at GX3, that was pure aura. But for the sake of being a total nerd and wanting to analyze a clip, because that's what I do around here, here's a quick one from Bare Necessities, which I hadn't covered in the last two videos. Let's quickly look at game number 2. I'm not going to talk about edge guards, and I'm not going to talk about neutral, but instead I'm going to talk about recovery. By nearly all metrics, Luigi has a pretty bad recovery. His recovery angles are almost non-existent because he's forced to take close to straight paths to make it back to ledge or stage, and his mix-ups usually require drift or spending a resource like jump, air dodge, or down B. I've talked in the past about how RapM's mash is unreal, which lets him create more mix-up opportunities than average by dipping slightly underneath where most Luigis would be able to recover, but the use of side B missile is also great. Unless you hit the 1 in 8 misfire attempt, the only way you can vary your recovery timing once you start side B'ing is by holding a charge. But again, this keeps you in a rather predictable path. A lot of people don't want to go out there and challenge it, one, because if Luigi gets the misfire and you get hit by it or die, that just feels terrible, and two, because there's plenty of end lag for most characters to be able to either punish it on stage or let the plumber spend all of his resources first and basically kill himself. But so many of RapMonster's stocks just go so much further against Zane because Zane is not finding the typical edge guards or kill confirms he gets on everybody else. For a matchup where Luigi's disadvantage state can be completely awful, RapMonster is making Zane work for every single stock. So check this one out. RapMonster is just getting destroyed on this stock, and this is what I mean when I say that the advantage-disadvantage can be so bad for Luigi. Zane starts it out in a flashy way, don't get me wrong, but we can boil this interaction down to one simple note: resource management. Because RapM started this engagement by immediately spending his double jump, he is just so completely Landing against Marth is a nightmare for most mid-tiers, and you can see even RapM tries to desperately trade hits to get out of the situation and just touch the ground. That doesn't really pan out either, and the offstage without resources is usually a death sentence for Luigi. Zane can track the missile, play around a potential misfire, and even if RapM gets it, Zane should still be in a pretty good position to take the stock eventually. RapMonster charges the missile to introduce a little bit of timing variance, like I said before, and connects the first missile with the completely RNG Fly Guy stage hazard. This looks very simple, but it completely changes the flowchart for Zane. Before that happens, Zane's positioned underneath the left platform, which lets him option a jump to track a more charged missile onto stage, or a wave dash to ledge to respond to a less charged missile and low recovery. By simply hitting the Fly Guy with the missile, RapM's possible trajectory routes have completely changed. You can see Zane immediately wave dash to ledge now, knowing that the next missile either connects there or goes slightly above it onto stage, but it's made the entire edge guard so much more confusing. Zane misses a rising nair and his opportunity at the stock, and RapMonster grabs the ledge and actually eventually takes Zane's stock first. Need I remind you, RapMonster had literally no resources in this recovery. No double jump, he didn't go for grounded cyclone, so he didn't have a charge for it on this stock, and yes, this is a real thing by the way, and there's some really silly coding behind how it does or doesn't work. The point is, the only timing mix-ups RapM could have gone for in this recovery were in his missile charge, whether or not he used an air dodge or up B, and the stage elements like Randall or RNG Fly Guys. This looks like such an innocuous sequence, but I absolutely lost my mind when I saw it. I wanted to share it with you guys. I think the kid is just too good. So if RapMonster is the slippery, technical, backpack-wearing shit-talker of this new generation, Dial M is just Junebug reincarnated. Well, kinda. I guess it's more like a Mr. Miyagi, student becomes the master type beat, I don't know. And look, let me just say it, anyone who subscribed to me in like the last 2 years already knows about my addiction to Kong posting. You guys made fun of me so much that it has basically become a ubiquitous meme in my community channels. I thought Junebug breaking Bum's 17-year-old placement record at Supernova was the peak of the Apes meta, and with June more or less retiring this year, I thought it was over. But I was wrong. Anyway, in that Supernova video, I talked about the Junebug Kwang inversion effect. The idea was that Kwang played more like a traditional optimized grappler, while Junebug succeeded by playing an incredible neutral game. Dial M is kind of a weird mix of these two playstyles, even doing things off flowchart and sometimes not even that optimal. He has DK flowcharts down, sure, most of the time they're pretty easy to do execution-wise, but he's also playing in a hyper-aggressive, read-heavy way, especially in matchups like DK Marth. I'm most definitely going to do another video focusing only on Dial M, but you should leave a comment anyway. Oh, also make sure you're subscribed. I had to lock in pretty hard, today to finish this video in time, and I've been working, quite frankly, insane hours to keep up a weekly or better upload schedule, so subscribing is a great way to show your support if you like the shit I've been doing. Anyway, like RapMonster, Dial M makes great use of the collective knowledge of the DK Discord, and I wanted to break down one quirk of his gameplay I noticed in his set versus Ossify, the second best Marth player in the world. So what makes the Marth matchup actually half decent for DK is that he can actually outrange Marth with back air, and the ape has reliable setups off cargo throw to build damage and secure stocks. These have very generous percent ranges and a relatively low barrier to execution, so a lot of DKs can just get stocks by playing defensive and grabbing, and because Marth doesn't have a projectile, it makes Scraps a pretty scary prospect. Marth cannot get lazy about his spacing or else he'll just get picked up, cargo thrown, and sent into a blast zone. With all of this in mind, Dial M's use of forward air is really interesting to me. DK's forward air is actually the aerial with the longest startup in the entire game. First active on frame 25 instead of Nair's first active frame on 10, Bear's first active frame on 7, or Up Air's first active frame on 6. It might seem counterintuitive in a battle of spacing to intentionally use a big, slow, and counterable move in this way, but it's working for Dial M. Dial M's sometimes using fair and neutral, sometimes from the ledge, or even sometimes in straight up disadvantage states. I actually messaged the DK Discord about this one too, a couple hours ago, and while some of this is chalked up to matchup inexperience on either side, the fringe use cases for this move are honestly really cool. At a glance, it looks like he's using it similarly to how Captain Falcons use Stomp. as a way to go over the top on some aerials, catch a full hop or jump to a platform, get a shield poke at the top of Marth's head, or punish a high recovery onto stage. Because it's a slow move, it's not a bug, it's a feature. On the surface, most would think that's an inherently bad thing, but it introduces a tempo change in neutral, which can add to the mental stack since DK doesn't have many good front-facing options. And the risk reward is relatively good, because if you hit it, it's really good, and if you get hit out of it, you're DK, so you're usually not dying to a Marth reacting and aerialing you right back. The fact that this is a long button is even good for more granular things, like being able to option into SDI down while the aerial is on its way to its active hitbox, meaning getting punished could be pretty minimal. Obviously, the use of conversions off cargo throw are still there, those get plenty of stocks, and don't get me wrong, the rough game plan of facing backwards against Marth is still happening a good chunk of the time, but I just found the ways he was innovating with this move to be interesting. Oh, also one last note, because this comparison was really funny to me, but the Discord compared DK Fair to a Dark Souls boss, saying if they give bosses attacks with really long windups, they can bait people into preemptively dodging or swinging. That rocks. That's awesome. Let's go DK. At the end of the Junebug Eggdog video from a couple years ago, I made a passing comment. I said that Zane had been struggling against weird characters lately, and that top players were going to have to study up on Donkey Kong if they wanted to stay at the top. With Junebug basically retiring as of this year, I didn't realize how fast that prophecy was going to come true from other players, because it wasn't just Junebug they had to worry about. It was an entire generation of teenagers who don't care who you are or what the tier list says. What's ironic here is that both of these characters, Luigi and Donkey Kong, are finding immense amounts of success against Marth. For Donkey Kong, I've talked ad nauseum about how it's actually a pretty decent matchup for the ape, and you probably don't need me to remind you for a third video in the last 2 months that I don't think Marth is a particularly good matchup for Luigi. The tournament where all of this went down, Genesis X3, was a paradox. It gave us a glimpse of a future without the gods, and the old guard. A future where a 14-year-old DK can take down a top 2 Marth player and a 19-year-old Luigi can humble a top 1 Marth player. But despite all of these crazy shakeups, it ended with a familiar sight. Cody Schwab, another contender for best player in the world, standing alone at the top. I can't help but wonder if that's a sign. The more things seem to change, the more they stay the same. But I also think if a 19-year-old playing Luigi and a 14-year-old playing Donkey Kong are able to take down some of the best players this game has to offer, I know I said maybe Melee isn't as solved as we thought, but I think this proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that it can't be solved. It will never be solved. Melee is a game that is prided on its infinite skill ceiling. We will never achieve perfection because perfection in this game is simply impossible. And if we ever think we're close, I don't know, maybe someone will get good with Mr. Game & Watch or something. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to Avishua Stein, Bobby Wasabi, Brent Mukai, Carter Roberts, Dark Genix, Eric is Cool, Gustavo Cantu Fernandez, James Fabman, Justin Duncan Mills, Kyle Carlin, Marshall Bradley, and Sam Wright.